I'm not on Ralph time. So I passed out to all of you a packet. This will help, especially being the last person speaking tonight. Everybody's kind of a little bit tired and whatever, but I love the way that this whole day and event has kind of woven together different people's presentations and how, we've talked about innovative stuff and we've talked about intergenerational already with Rachel's thing. And the interesting thing is I have worshiped at Williamsburg Presbyterian Church with Rachel many times because my daughter lives near Queens Lake. So, yeah. So it's been kind of fun to make that connection too. But as Rachel was saying, intergenerational ministry is an important part. So how many of you think your church has a healthy intergenerational ministry? Okay, maybe. Okay, maybe. So how many think that you have an intergenerational ministry that includes worship, faith formation, service and mission, leadership? Anybody have all those intergenerationally? Okay, maybe. All right. So what does intergenerational ministry mean? It really means sort of what Rachel was talking about, intentional engagement between two or more generations. When we say intergenerational ministry, people think, oh, it has to do with children. It's about adults and children. No. It's about two or more generations, and what Rachel was talking about is one of them when you were talking about bringing a couple of different ones together. It can deal with children, absolutely, but it's intentionally engaging them. So what most of us have are multi-generational events and gatherings, like a fellowship dinner, right? You're like, well, we're intergenerational. Yeah, the kids are there, the youth are there. Adults are all there, but is it intentional where you're working together and listening to one another? That's the key. So when we look at generations, and I gave you a chart, Rachel talked about Gen Z, but I gave you a chart of kind of where these generations overlap. There's a lot to talk about generational characteristics. And there's been a bunch of work on that. There's plenty to read out there about each generation. There's even some really neat stuff being done about stewardship and giving at each generation. So look at those. You can Google that online. That's not something I'm here to tell you about tonight. But if you've never had an event at your church talking to adults and young people together about generational characteristics, it's an aha moment for everyone in the room. When you start telling them why they might think in a certain way, act in a certain way, give in a certain way, it's pretty interesting to see how, especially the older adults, will go, well, that's why my grandkids are like that. They start to see that their culture, their context, their experiences shape them, and then their culture, context, and experiences of their kids or their grandkids have shaped them. And it starts a neat way to dialogue. So if you've never done that, I encourage you. I've even done one of those presentations at a retirement center, and it really opened their eyes. So just to give them some ideas about that. But three of the things that are on your colored sheet in your packet about what intergenerational ministry is marked by is mutuality. So all participate and all benefit. So there's no bystander. You're all engaged. You're all doing something. You're talking to each other, but you're also listening to each other. All right? So that's the reciprocity, is that we all give and receive, and there's an equality where everyone is valued. That means the little 4-year-old is valued as much as the 75, 80-year-old. And you can do this in multiple ways. So what would be one way in worship? Give me one way in worship that you think intentional intergenerational ministry could happen? Give me an example of something you could do in worship. Yeah, go ahead, Beck. Music, absolutely. We engaged intentionally. We can have a group sing together. That's intergenerational. We have them play music. We have our praise band that has adults and youth members in it. They are intentionally engaged in ministry together. What about having an adult and a child do liturgy parts together? They can do that. They can do a prayer together. They can do a prayer of confession. They can do anything, any parts of the service. Pair them up to work together. What about faith formation? What about faith formation? I'm going to give you an example that Alex and I did here at Beulah. One Advent, we took an Advent 4-week thing, and we asked for one adult and one youth to partner together. And we had the adults and youth together for class, and the adult and youth each week, they taught the lesson. So they had to meet together. They had to look at the lesson together, figure out what they were going to do and say, and everybody had their unique way to present. And you know what happened was all of the youth came to support each one of the youth that was teaching each week. And their parents came to support the youth. And it became this really neat interactive thing. So again, thinking outside of the box in a way, you kind of what Alex was talking about the innovative ministry. So what about service and mission? One of the things I have found in children's ministry is it's so hard to find places that will take children to work on a mission project, right, or a service project. So where can you go and do those kinds of things where everybody can work together side by side? So one of the things we've had here is we've been planting trees on our property here. I think we were like over 600, 800 trees that we've planted throughout this whole property. And we have these wonderful days where family, all ages, come together, and they don't stick with their family. They go with other adults, and they'll go and plant trees. Everybody can do that. Everybody can do something with that. So anything ecologically related, believe me, they'll take you. They love it. They want to teach kids about ecology. They want to teach kids about creation care. So that's one of those places that everybody can join in and work together. Leadership. What do you think? How many of you have a youth in leadership at your church? Okay, couple. Okay, all right. That was a big thing a while back, and it's kind of fallen out. To have a youth deacon or a youth elder, it's kind of fallen away. But please think about that. Think about your youth and their gifts and where they could serve. If it's not as an elder or a deacon, is there some kind of committee that might be a passion for them? Earth care, whatever you decide, where can they be? Don't just say, well, they're technology. That's not necessarily true. Although you could have older people working with them in the technology area. And that's a great intergenerational way to serve with one another. So those are all possibilities, but think beyond what you're used to thinking about, like a one-off event that's intergenerational. And how do you get started? So talking about innovative ministries, the past year and a half, I have been a shared Christian educator between Beulah Presbyterian Church and Plum Creek Presbyterian Church. Plum Creek needed a half-time person, and I was here, and they're close to me, and we worked out an agreement. So it's a little innovative thing again. I was completely full-time, and basically Beulah leased me to Plum Creek, and Plum Creek paid half of my salary and benefits. So as of next week, I am going 30 hours to Plum. But we had this innovative kind of thing, and as I told them about intergenerational things, I think that's something that Plum Creek could get into, and they need to be listening to these generations. We had, a little bonfire picnic one night. And of course, as everybody usually does, they sit with their little cliquey group at a table, right? Adults sit with their friends, the youth sat with their friends, parents who knew other parents sat with them. And so we started by saying, okay, who came the farthest at your table? Stand up, okay? All right, I want everybody that's standing up, the farthest person, you need to move to another table. And then we posed a question. Like, talk about the last thing you used that was a piece of technology today. So kids are talking about what they used, et cetera. So by the time we got done, we did this about 8 times so that all the tables by the end were mixed. We talked about what was your favorite activity as a young, middle schooler. What did you do? The older adults said we roller skated. The other, and the kids are listening. We got done with that, and the adults, the kids didn't say too much to me, but they got to know some people that they didn't know before. But the adults said, I didn't ever talk to those kids before, and I got to know about this, and I got to know about that. So it's just starting to make it intentional that you start to have these conversations. I know when we were talking before with Chris, he was talking about mentoring and confirmation, even with a mentoring process. There's another pairing of generations. So it's an intentional pairing. It's a good way to get them to work with you with confirmation. Make sure that you not only have the parents involved, as Jay said, but get another adult that's a different age group involved with them. It doesn't have to be every night, or every day, or whatever you have confirmation, but it's a way to get that generational thing so that they're being able to listen and hear each other. So another opportunity for that. I gave you a very long bibliography here of different things, but I'm going to add a few books to it real quickly. And these are fairly recent books. John Roberto's has been out in various forms for different years. This is the latest one, Lifelong Faith by John Roberto. John has a lot to say about intergenerational ministry. Preaching, David Sinos is A Gospel for All Ages, teaching and preaching with the whole church. Okay? This is he's well known on the speaker trail for that. Not necessarily a religious book, but a new kind of diversity, making the different generations on your team a competitive advantage. So it's something to think about on any team, diversity. I was just with a church that is looking for a transitional team for pastor. And, when you're looking at your session and they're all older people, and they're like, well, who's going to be on the transition team? And, the 2 older gentlemen put their hands up, and they're always on, because they're personnel and they're finance. And I'm like, so where's the young parent of teenagers that's a woman? Because I don't want somebody the same generation on there, So thinking about those generational differences when you take a step into teams like that. And this one is like a week out, and it's called All Ages Becoming, Intergenerational Practices in the Formation of God's People. And they are basically essays by all different kinds of people in the field of intergenerational ministry. But what I really like is at the end of each one, at the end of each chapter, it says theology and practice, questions to consider. So even if you want to do a study at church on them, you could pick a couple of chapters. And this is a great discussion about how to engage in intergenerational ministry. The last piece I have for you is a cohort that I was on, actually. Christina Embry is from I wrote it down because I didn't, Brethren in Christ denomination. She did her doctoral project on connections and intergenerational ministry, and she has a coaching kind of work now that she does for anybody. And this is, I actually was in the doctoral project with her doing research for this church and for Plum Creek. So it was interesting for me to do her survey in 2 different churches and see the difference. So I've really quickly put down for you the areas that she was thinking about. One of them, institutional assessment. And I've given you what it says and the places she wanted me to look, like paid staff job descriptions, current roles of volunteer staff, different things like documents, programs, things like that. How open are they to intergenerationality? And so it was really interesting to look at. Spatial assessment. How is our building and our, where do we gather that we meet up with multiple generations intentionally being able to meet with one another? So that was another one. Technological assessment. What Facebook look like? What's your website look like? Are you intentionally engaging to generations together? So that was it. And then relational assessment. So I've given you the definition of kind of why she did those, and then the places she had me look. And I had to do kind of like an inventory. This is what her project is. This is what her coaching is about. So her email's up there if you want to ever ask her. But she has Refocus Ministry, and you can look her group up on Facebook too, and those kind of places to look for that. There's an Intergenerate conference every 2 years down in Nashville, and they are always have speakers that are doing intergenerational ministry, but they always have people who are doing research, and they're presenting their papers there too. So it's the latest and greatest in intergenerational ministry. It's a really neat way to connect with people that are doing it and best practices. So that's something you can look at, and you can look for them on Facebook and whatever too. But that was real quick. Anybody have any questions or any thoughts about intergenerational ministry? Okay. Thank you.